Welcome to Sabbath School, brought to you by It Is Written. I'm Eric Flickinger, your host, and this is the final lesson in this quarter's adult Bible study guide. We are taking a look at the resurrection of Moses. This is where we're going to pull together the whole concept of present truth in the book of Deuteronomy. And with me, once again, for one final time this quarter, is the author of this quarter's Sabbath School guide, Bible study guide, and that is Clifford Goldstein. Cliff, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
All right, so let's pull this together. The resurrection of Moses. We've looked at Moses and his writing of the book of Deuteronomy. He was, of course, inspired to write the book of Deuteronomy. It's a book that has been quoted throughout the rest of the Old Testament, throughout the New Testament. And here we are at the very end of Moses' life. And the memory text for this week is very, very interesting. It's found in Jude verse number 9, and here's what it says. Yet Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." Now, here we have a guy, and I hate to call Moses a guy, but here we have a guy who wrote 6 books in the Old Testament. He wrote most certainly the book of Deuteronomy that we've been looking at for 13 weeks now. He's quoted in so much of the rest of the Bible. And here we have the devil contending for him and saying, no, Moses is mine. What in the world?
Well, in one sense, why not? We're sinners. We're sinners. Moses is a sinner. Okay, Moses, we're all, Paul in Romans, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Moses was, God used him to do great things, but you're not saved by works. You're not saved, all your works are, it's interesting. Deuteronomy, or not Deuteronomy, where was it? Isaiah. All your righteousness is as filthy rags. Beged Edin is the Hebrew. I'm not even going to translate that on this program because you'll probably want to cut it and we'll have to start over, and I don't feel like starting over. But that's all your righteousness, Beged Edin. If you know Hebrew, you'll know then what it is. So if that's our righteousness, and those are the bottom line in the end, Moses was a sinner, and Satan thought he had a claim on him, as he thinks he's got a claim, and he's got a claim on us in one sense, but that's of course the whole coming of Jesus to free us from Satan's claim. So that's what I think you've got going on here.
So there's no question that Moses was a sinner. We've all sinned and come short of the glory of God. No question about that. But I think there's one instance, one episode, if you will, in Moses' life that we can kind of put our finger on and say, yeah, that was a mistake. That was exercising poor judgment. That was allowing your EQ to get out of whack. And that's the story that's recorded in Numbers chapter 20.
Yeah.
And in Numbers chapter 20, you could start in verse 1. I'm just going to drop down to verse number 10.
Yeah, that's where we want to get to. Yeah.
Verse 10 says, "And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he," that is Moses, "said to them, 'Hear now, you rebels. Must we bring water for you out of this rock?' Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly. And the congregation and their animals drank. And then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, 'Because you did not believe me to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them.'" It's it's a bit of a downer, in this story of Moses, yeah. But it's there.
Yeah. Well, again, it's, the spirit of prophecy does give some insight into this, but you really, if you read it, I think and look, in one sense too, all right, these people should have known better. Okay? No question. But who should have known better of them all? Okay? Moses should have known better. Okay? The Lord could deal with these people. The Lord could deal with them. Moses didn't have to get as frustrated as it was. You know, it's kind of interesting. Remember it says Moses was the meekest man who ever lived? Well, he didn't seem so meek now. Hear now, ye rebels. You know, he rebels. But then the part that's interesting, first of all, he was supposed to only speak to the rock, not smite it. Then he smites it twice, but he says, let me read that again. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock. And he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod, this is the rod he performed all these other miracles with. And then he uses the rod, he smites it. And so, but I think the key here too is, must we fetch water? What was Moses doing there? We're gonna do it? Like you, Moses, Moses, the miracles you've been doing have been starting to get to your head a little bit. You know, were you forgetting you can't fetch water out of a rock anymore than I can get water out of a rock? So there's maybe a little more here. It could have been, look, we're all human. Paul said too, lest I be unduly exalted from the abundance of revelation, he have this physical ailment. So perhaps here, what we're seeing here was a little hubris in Moses. This meek man, must we do it? Anyway, that's one way to, I think, look at what's going on here. And I'm not sure what the lesson the next day, the sin of Moses, part 2, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of looks at what God actually, how he responded to him in verse number 12, because you did not believe me, to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel.
Good. In other words, you were taking it on yourself. Wow. So really at first glance you think, oh, come on, what a bummer. The guy does all this, and all he wants to do is get in the promised land, and one little frustration. So there was a little more there than that. But even then, still, come on, God. Come on. This poor schnook, everything. He's 120 years old, all those years with the sheep, then 40 years in the wilderness with these people. You're right on the edge. One slip up, and he's out. I mean, on one level, it can seem a little harsh. Okay? Anyway.
So we are living down in 2021, almost 2022. We've got a story here of Moses who hits a rock instead of talking to it. What lesson are we going to pull from this? What lesson should we not let slip by us that we could pull from this brief period of Moses' life?
Well, I don't know. It's obviously a unique situation, but I suppose who of us, particularly, I've got a lot of faults. You don't even want to be in to know, but generally, I don't have a temper. I mean, my wife, we've been married 30 some years, and she only remembers once or twice, where I kind of lost it, and then I was over it. Okay, I was over it, but I hold everything in, and then that's no good either. But who hasn't, in a fit of anger, one fit of anger, I'd hate to think of how many lives might have been severely damaged, and the damage done from one fit of anger where you said or you did something. I mean, there's probably a lot of dead people and probably a lot of people sitting in jail from somebody who, in a fit of anger. It's so funny. In some states, if you want to buy a gun, they make you wait 7 days because they think somebody's angry and they're going to go out and buy a gun and run home and shoot someone. So they have this thing, they make them wait 7 days, hoping ideally they'll cool down. But, I think here in the end, I don't know, I would say, well, look at the final question of the day's lesson. How often do we say or even do things in a fit of anger, even if we believe the anger is justified? And then how can we learn to stop, pray, seek the power of God, and do right before we say and do wrong instead? So, it might seem kind of trivial in the context of all the issues here, but I think that's a fair thing. Be careful. One fit of anger. As we said, there were deeper issues here. Must we fetch, the water from the rock? Must we? There was a bit of hubris here as well, but control your temper. Think before you act. Pray before you act. You could save yourself from, I think, a multitude of sins.
I think absolutely. And again, God is giving us lessons from the Old Testament for our admonition upon whom the ends of the world are come. We've got a lot to learn from the Old Testament. I think it was last week, Cliff, you pointed out how God has given us these Old Testament lessons for us to learn from. And if we don't, we're missing out. We can't understand the New Testament. We can't understand the times that we're in if we don't understand the Old Testament and learn lessons from it. And of course, I think Moses learned a valuable lesson through this experience, that though he didn't have a whole lot longer to live, certainly he did make some changes. He allowed it to impact him in a positive way. I think we could say that. We're going to be taking a look here in just a moment or two at the death of Moses. So we've seen his life. We've seen how God has used him. We've seen how God has ministered to others through him. We've seen how people in Moses' day were able to get a clearer picture of God as a result of the communication that Moses had with God. Moses was by no means a perfect individual. He had his flaws, just like you have and just like I have. But God was able to use him in order to reach people in a positive way, both in his day and quite honestly in our day as well. Think of what we would be missing in the Bible if we didn't have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Job. If all of those books of the Bible were missing, where would we be? God used a man by the name of Moses to help us understand the plan of salvation and God's love for us. If you haven't picked up yet the companion book for this quarter's Bible study guide, Deuteronomy, the Book of Love by Jerry Muscala, make sure that you pick that up at itiswritten.shop. And that's going to help you see a clearer picture of God's love through the book of Deuteronomy. We're going to come back in just a moment and look at the death of Moses. We'll be back in just a moment.
Planning for your financial future is a vital aspect of Christian stewardship. For this reason, It Is Written is pleased to offer free planned giving and estate services. For information on how we can help you, please call 800-992-2219. Call today or visit our website, hislegacy.com. Call 800-992-2219.
Welcome back to Sabbath School, brought to you by It Is Written. This is our last segment of the 13th lesson of the quarter. We're reaching the very end of the year, and we're getting to the very heart of what it is that we've been studying, and that is present truth in the book of Deuteronomy. We're looking at Moses, and we're looking at how his life ended. Good news is that's not the end. But let's take a look at it here. We are on Tuesday's lesson looking at the death of Moses, Deuteronomy 34, verses 1 through 12. I'm not going to read all the verses, but let's read the first few verses here, Cliff. Verse 1 says, Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho, and the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan. all Naphtali and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zion. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land of which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. Wow. God showed him an awful lot.
Yeah. It was a supernatural thing. It'd have to be. And I believe Spirit of Prophecy does teach that. But, you can't, even if he had binoculars, okay, he's not going to be able to see that far, because I do believe the land that they had was a whole lot bigger than the land of modern Israel today. Okay? Well, we know that for a fact, that, a lot of modern Israel today is very small in comparison, and you can't look from one end of Israel to the other. So, and when you first read this, it almost can read like he showed you all this. I have let you see it with your eyes, but guess what, Moshe? You ain't going over there. So, it almost seems like he was rubbing it in a little bit, but we know better than that. So the servant of the Lord died there according to the word of the Lord. And, to this day, they don't know, as far as I know, where Moses was buried. And I think that whole point was, and else too, they wept for Moses, they wept here, and all that he had done, despite all the trouble that they gave him, and the days of weeping came to an end. So he died. So in one sense, on the surface, see, remember we talked earlier? We talked about the link between the Old Testament and the New Testament, why Deuteronomy was quoted so much, because the Old Testament was quoted a lot in the New. But again, the New Testament had more light, more truth. It was taking that truth and progressive truth. So if you have just the Hebrew Bible, just the Old Testament, as far as I know, there's nothing in the New Testament. Moses dies, and that's it. Moses is dead. Never went over into the Promised Land. So, and as I said, and the lesson says here, it would almost seem as if the Lord had been teasing Moses, rubbing it in. You could have been there had you simply obeyed me as you should have, or something like that. But again, another way to read it here, as it says, instead the Lord was showing Moses that despite everything, even Moses' mistake, God was going to be faithful to the covenantal promises that he made with the fathers and with Israel itself. And then, as the lesson says, and we will see too, the Lord had something even better in store for his faithful but flawed servant. And then, of course, we come to the New Testament. We come to the verse that we looked at here. Because, you have, it's a very important doctrine. Of all the things that I had learned from Seventh-day Adventists, I'll never forget, again, I've told my conversion story. I was just born again overnight, became a believer overnight, but knew nothing. And you said to me I was a sinner, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about. But I'll never forget the very next day when I met this guy. I didn't even know what religion he was. And I was asking him about, because I knew I met Jesus. I knew I met God. I was a believer now. And I asked him, so what's with all this eternal torment stuff in hell? Okay? And then instantly he explained to me, the dead sleep, then they're raised, eternal destruction. So the bottom line is the state of the dead is an important teaching here. And Moses died, and again, why would they be contending for his body? If Moses died, he didn't go into the promised land. Well, big deal. He went off to heaven, okay, right away. So anyway, but the bottom line here is these verses here in Jude 9, as the question says, how does this text help explain the appearance of Moses in the New Testament? Because you do have the transfiguration. But again, you've got Enoch and Elijah never died. Okay, that was clear. So that could explain them being there. But then you've got this here with Moses, this rather cryptic. I wish there would have been a little more. I wish there could have been another line or two, making it a little more explicit. But it was clear, though, that Michael disputed with the devil about the body of Jesus, about the body of Moses. But clearly, how could the devil win the argument? He couldn't have won the argument, okay? Because, we don't know, though, when this happened. We don't know how long after Moses died. A week? 1,000 years? Whatever. And as far as Moses was concerned, it didn't matter. I often said to people, I don't know when Jesus is coming back, and I really don't care. I really do. I just care that he does come back, okay? And for everybody dead, it doesn't matter when he comes back. When they're dead, boom, whether it's 1,000 years after they died or 2 minutes after they died, the experience is all the same for them. So anyway, this helps explain. So in one sense, Moses got it better. Okay? Moses got it better. He got to the real promised land. Though you could ask yourself a question. I don't know if any of you ever remember, there was a popular pastor many, many years ago named Morris Venden. And he told how he was visiting, it was pretty cute. He was visiting one of the museums in Egypt. And they had Pharaoh Tutankhamun, or someone who might have been the Pharaoh of Egypt, who might have been the Pharaoh of Egypt when Moses was there. They don't really know. And it was so funny. He said, well, had Moses not stayed faithful, I'd be looking down at Moses there. And now instead Moses is up there looking down at me here. And I thought that was a pretty clever, pretty cute thing. But I guess the question might be is, Moses gets to see all the fun down here. But the bottom line is we ultimately know because of Jesus, and I'm assuming this happened even before the cross. Because again, had Jesus not gone to the cross, what right did he have? So again, you get into the whole question of God's sovereignty and foreknowledge and free will, and you could debate that till your brain turns to lucite. I don't know how it all works. All I know is ultimately because of the death of Jesus, his death and resurrection, Moses died and God resurrected him. And we die and we will be resurrected as well because of what Jesus has done for us. And that's the bottom line. Because again, in the end, as we said earlier, they could go into the promised land, they could do everything, have a great life there, and then they die forever. There's got to be more than that. So anyway, that's really what I see here with the death of Moses, and then Friday's lesson, of course, the resurrection of us all. And that's the great hope that we have.
Cliff, why don't we've got about 2 minutes left here, 3 minutes left. Let's kind of bring this together with 1 Corinthians 15. Paul writes about the resurrection. This is what it's all about. This is what we're looking forward to. Let's pull everything together on this note.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians. See, again, it's fascinating too. This stuff, these verses make absolutely no sense if you believe the common, I've even read numerous scholars who are not Adventists who will say, look, the great hope of the Bible is not dying and going off to heaven. That's not a New Testament teaching. That's not, that the most they'll say is there's some nebulous something or other between, they die and then whatever, some nebulous thing. The great hope is the resurrection at the end of time when Jesus comes back. And basically, Paul's saying, if there is no resurrection of the dead, not even Christ was raised, and if Christ has not been raised, your preaching is in vain and your faith is in vain. Why? You preach someone Jesus, they die, they're off to heaven, floating there, they're off with the Lord. This makes utterly no sense if you believe that. But if you understand, as we do, the dead sleep, they close their eyes and boom. Again, we don't know how long Moses was dead before the Lord got him. And for him, it made no difference. It made no difference, I guess, except how much of the fun he gets to see down here. But here, the great hope, God raised up Moses, and our great hope is because of Jesus, because of his death and resurrection, we have the hope as well. And we've got foreshadowed in Deuteronomy bits and pieces of the story that ultimately has its fulfillment in Jesus.
Present truth in the book of Deuteronomy. We've been enjoying studying it for the last 13 weeks. Cliff, once again, thank you so much for being with us this quarter. It has been a privilege to have you.
Yeah, it's been fun being here. Thank you very much.
And we're looking forward to having you again next quarter as we begin a new adult Bible study guide with a new subject. And you'll find that right here at the very same time, at the very same place as we continue looking at God's plan for your life today. And as usual on It Is Written Sabbath School program, we're going to have the author of the Sabbath School lesson with us next quarter. Again, Cliff, thanks, and thanks to you for being with us. We're going to be coming together again next week as we continue looking at Sabbath School, brought to you by It Is Written. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.